show off.
This right here is, we're going to go through a little bit of electrical stuff here. Toward the end of this thing, there's something I had covered before, but I like to go over it again because it's important to remember this stuff. This right here is a 2004 Toyota Avalon XL 3-liter V6 MFI NeoHC, engine designation 1F ZFE, and then you got some high mileage there. They had a B0118, the short and the side squib, left hand to B+. What is a squib? Somebody tell me what a squib is.
I know what the problem is.
Huh?
I know what's wrong with it.
What's a squib?
It's made out of Japanese recycled beer cans.
I know, but that doesn't answer my question I asked you. What's a squib? Somebody tell me what a squib is.
Like a squib cake?
No, squib. If you look up squib in the dictionary definition of a squib is a firecracker. That's basically what's in the airbag that causes it to go boom. I don't know if you ever saw the video of the Lexus that we lit off, the passenger side airbag. It was the Lexus LS400, and when it lit off, that airbag went all the way to the seat and it busted the windshield. It filled up that whole place there. I don't know how there'd be any room for anybody there, you know. But anyway, they got here's your wiring right here. And these are your side airbag squids. These are the little firecrackers. You've also got seatbelt pretensioners, or little small things that basically, this is one right here. This is a seatbelt pretensioner out of a Crown Victoria. You know, it's just basically, and what it does, this one here was one that I replaced because it was open. Now, you're never supposed to take an ohm meter and measure these. You might notice I got a shorting bar touching those two terminals together anyway. But I actually did the cardinal sin and went ahead and measured this, and it was wide open. If you measure it with a meter and the meter shoots enough juice through there to light this thing off, it's going to go boom. But this was on one of the college cars, and it was open as it could be, even when I pulled the little shorting bar out of it. And I did it from a distance, you know. But it didn't, it's not going to make a big explosion. This right here, all it does is basically it's got this little thing that goes, and it locks the seat belt that keeps you from flipping forward. And that was about $140. I think I had to replace it to get rid of an airbag light. Anyway, on this particular one, here's a sort of an overview that I spliced together of that Toyota Avalon. And there's the squids. And this one right here is the one that's in question right here. What you like to do whenever you're pulling a code like that is you zero in on the part of the schematic that you need to focus on. And that's what we basically did here. All right, what we got here, got a test procedure here. Unplug the side airbag squib and see if the code's gone, and see if it sets a B0116. If it's setting a code saying it's shorted and you unplug it, it should set a new code saying it's open, right?
Yep.
What does that tell you? That tells me that we actually have an engine, I mean, that's not an engine controller, but a controller, the box that's setting the codes and looking at this, is seeing stuff out there that makes sense. Now, if you unplug it, if you unplug the squib and it still says it's shorted, what does that mean? Wires. Your wires could be touching, or it could be pinched together, something like that. You see what I'm saying? They could be melted together, touching, connectors pushed back, and maybe the metal parts touching. And basically, so if I unplug that and this is saying open, I say, okay, well, from here all the way out there, my wires is good, right? Okay, next you check the wire in between the center airbag sensor assembly module. That's the base, the main box, which is the actual main airbag box is a sensor in addition to being a box on most of these vehicles nowadays. And so and it's got a little sensor in it that whenever you stop, it slides forward and closes the contact and all. But anyway, the side airbag squib, pin 1, yellow, red, and the squib goes to A6 at the module. There'll be a pop test on this tomorrow. You don't have to remember all these numbers. Pin 2, yellow, green, and squib goes to A5 module, check wiring. In other words, you see if it's shorted to power anywhere down here. You're directing between here and here. That's where you're at, right there. That's the side airbag. This one, it pops out of the seat. And this is the one that I think is the only real good airbag that saves your life just about every time. Because if a lot of people die when they get T-boned because their head hits the B-pillar, this thing right here makes a soft cushion for that. That's a good airbag to have. If I could get rid of all of the other airbags, or the ones in the dash, I probably would. I'm not saying you should disable them, but I don't like those airbags. I've never liked them. But that particular one there is a good one. Yeah.
About the airbags, my old car is an 07 Suzuki Forenza, and they actually had a recall because the airbag wouldn't deploy when you had an accident.
Yeah.
Was they deployed when you flipped it?
If the airbags wouldn't deploy, sometimes that makes... I knew this one guy that was driving a pickup truck, and he got rear-ended, and when he went forward and hit the vehicle in front of him, the airbag lit off, and this cover that opens up that lets the airbag come out, he hit that with his head and it sliced his head open. And he wouldn't even have been injured if there was no airbag. You know, this kind of thing, I despise those airbags that come out of the dash. I mean, I don't know what in the world. They used to have the notion they were gonna have them come out from underneath the dash, you know, big clear ones and all, but whatever. Anyway, if the wiring's okay, if the module may have failed, okay, and this is basically what we're looking at here. We're looking at the side squib, and we're looking at just 2 wires. This is not complicated, but you do have to pinpoint the connector. You got me? You gotta pinpoint the connector they're in. All right, now, what you gotta put up with your, by the way, Rachel built this initially whenever, or the one I used for a template for this, and she put all these animations in here. Center airbag crash sensor assembly could be bad, center airbag crash sensor assembly wiring could be a problem, and all that. And so, come on. Replace the center airbag sensor assembly wiring, not the sensor itself, but the wiring. And what we did was we ran new wires between the module and the squib. Now that's something you gotta be really, really, really careful how you do it. I'm always saying, whenever you're working on electrical stuff, and particularly accessories, don't modify. Now they replace wires and that's okay, because they were basically putting it back like it was supposed to be, but don't ever modify anything like your airbag system. Don't ever modify cruise control. You know what I mean? Like you've modified the cruise control and the thing runs away because of it and somebody crashes and burns. You know, then they go to the end, the crash investigators are probably gonna come back and say, somebody modified this, and then they go find out you did it, and the shop and or you may be in big trouble. So don't modify this stuff, leave it like it was designed, you know? And that's basically how that, you can make adjustments on it, like if the cable needs to be adjusted a little, that's not a big deal. But if you're saying, well, I'm gonna do something, like if this one that I had somebody had put LED tail lights on this Ford Focus. And when they did that, they lost their cruise control, because this cruise control module looked for a ground coming through the regular taillight bulbs. Right? So they said, well, you're going to have to put those bulbs back on there. You know, well, is there some other way we can get it to work? Well, let's say I've modified these, hit the brake, it neutralizes the ground coming through the bulbs, it drops the cruise. What if my modification goes south from some reason or another, and they hit the brake and it doesn't cancel and it runs away?
Yeah, press the off button.
Yeah. Well, if you can think about it, I had this one guy says that he's driving his Jeep Cherokee, and those Jeep Cherokees, whenever they're in their power curve, you won't stop them, you know. And if it's accelerated, and he says that they said the cruise control sometimes didn't cancel, and so he drove it and just got real relaxed with it, because every time he tapped the brake, the cruise control would drop out. And finally, one time he was on a bypass over there in Dothan, you know, not far from where we were at the dealership. And he goes to tap the brake and the cruise control doesn't disengage. And of course he's a kind of a big muscled up kind of a guy, and he panics and he's stomping on the brake harder and harder, and the Jeep is saying, we're slowing down, we need to keep speeding up. And it keeps applying the throttle, and he's down there trying to keep from hitting other cars, doing a burnout on the traffic circle. Just smoking the tire. Well, and he finally shut everything down, but it was like, you know, he almost had a heart attack. Now somebody killed on that thing. I had a throttle stick one time like that on the car. The throttle sticks, the guy probably got a ticket, there's nothing wrong with this car. And I just punched it into the floor, and it stuck under the floor mat on that one like it did on the one out here. And it was like a turbo coupe. It was like, whoa, you know, I had to figure out how to get the stuff from the floor mat. This is a top kick, 6.6 liter V8, blah, blah. You've seen these big top kick things right here. The customer concern was the clearance lights are on all the time, no other issues are present on the vehicle, and vehicle is misspelled. Okay, so here we go, right here we got test. We're going to locate and remove the marker light relay from the instrument panel fuse block. If the lights go off, put the short to ground on the marker lamp switch circuit. Now what the marker lamp switch does is it grounds the coil on the relay. So you turn that on, the relay gets the ground, it's click. There's grounding switches sometimes. The relay is not always a power switch thing. If the circuit's not shorted to ground, replace the marker lamp relay. Okay. Hello. Potential causes marker lamp relay, marker lamp switch wiring. This is what we got here. That's what the relay looks like. This is where it is on that particular vehicle, and it turned out that whenever the smoke cleared, confirmed fix, we replaced the marker lamp relay. Yay. Now then, we're going to talk a minute about a hybrid. This is what we got right here. We've got a 2010 Toyota Prius base, just nothing special about it. It's got a dual overhead cam, so on and so forth. The auxiliary water pump was replaced. And now the check hybrid system light is illuminated with codes POAOD, POAO9, and U110. Now this little water pump right here, you know, you guys might remember from Special Topics 2, the hybrid system has got its own cooling system. You know, the inverter gets really hot. The inverter is a thing that takes battery power that's DC and turns it into AC so that the motors can run. That thing warms up pretty good because it's got those little IGBT transistors in there working so hard and all that. So we've got special antifreeze, a dedicated cooling system, and a little auxiliary water pump that runs on AC. Okay, and that particular one has got some issues on this particular car. All three codes share the same connector, A59, on the inverter. You got to verify the connector is fully seated, and there's no bent pins. You test the violet wire connector A59 terminal 35 for 0 volts. The power management control, it sends a reference voltage out to the violet wire, and that goes through the inverter detection switch, and then out to terminal 36, and the service plug interlocked to ground. There is another there's a third wire, in these harnesses that will know when it's unplugged, and so it shuts the hybrid stuff down. You know, that's some of this interlock that we're talking about. That's another story. Hello, come on, y'all. Let's go. There we go. Potential causes. There's your service plug. The service plug, this is what you pull out when you're going to work on it, and you want to make sure that you don't get fried. After you pull this out, you're going to let the capacitors bleed off because it's going to take them a little while to do that. And then there's your A59 connector right there. Okay, this is some of the stuff. You service plug grip, you know. There's a fuse in that, by the way. There's a big old fuse that looks like one that come out of an old fuse box in a house in there, like the ones you see under police car hoods and that kind of thing. And your hybrid inverter wiring can be the thing. This right here, incidentally, your hybrid vehicle battery is basically connected with this. When you unplug that, it's like when it's got a series circuit and you unplug that, you pull that out, you've taken part of the series circuit out and you shut everything down. That's what that's about right there. A59, notice this guy found that particular pin. We were talking about that last week. You found that particular pin in the inverter plug. And what he located on that, let me see if I can get this thing confirmed, fixed. Tighten connector A59, connector A59 was not seated all the way, so basically it wasn't locked in there like it should have been, and that turned out to be what the whole problem was through all those codes and everything else, you know. Now this 88 Ranger, some of you guys might remember me, I told this story a while back, but this is an important thing to remember. All right, what I had a low alternator output. The original story was the guy says, I went to AutoZone and I bought an alternator, and when I put it on there, it's almost very shortly after I cranked it up, I saw smoke coming from under the dash. And he says, and I went back and told them their alternator burned up some of my truck, so they gave me my old alternator back, and they said bring it down here to the Ford dealer, and if it turned out the alternator had burned it up, they'd pay for whatever damages it was. And so the guy brought it down there, and I says, I need the alternator they sold you, and I need your old alternator to be on there. Well, he brought that down there with the old alternator on there. The alternator that was on there was loud and stinking and hot, and you could smell it from 5 feet away. It was just an awful, burned up alternator, just totally fried. I put the good alternator on there, and I put my charging system tester. This is one that came from Mac Tools, BCH 35. Anyway, you notice what I had right here? I had amperage here. See my amperage? You know what when you check in with the charging system, you ought to see what on the voltage side if it's working good. 14.5. And then you'll see amperage over here, right? Okay, I was getting an amperage reading, but I was just under 12 volts. Now, what in the Sam Hill is going to cause that? Well, I mean, you know, the alternator that was on there was just destroyed, and the one that we put on there produced these kind of readings here. This is not the old alternator. This is the new one that came from AutoZone. And so basically what I found, as I let it run a little bit, I saw smoke and stuff. I looked under the dash here, and I found that the inertia switch the wires going to the inertia switch were all burned up and everything. And well, it had burned up the inertia switch, and somebody had bypassed the inertia switch, you know, with Scotch locks and all that kind of stuff. And I said, this is not good. And so I said, I need to go ahead and fix this. So I went ahead and fixed it. And after I went ahead and fixed that, I cranked it up, and I was sitting there watching things to see if there was smoke coming from anywhere else. And I saw a fire under the hood. I said, good grief, what's going on out here? So I went out there and looked, and the fuel pump relay had caught fire and was literally just about to burn the truck down. And I had to fire extinguish it and all this kind of stuff. I said, this is incredible. And this is the mess that was left after the fuel pump relay died. And so, all right, are we seeing a pattern developing here? We burned up the inertia switch, and that was the weak link in the chain. And then we fixed those wires and made them stronger. And now we found another weak link in the chain. We set fire to the fuel pump relay. Oh, this is great fun. All right, so basically I had to go back in there with my tool. You see my fancy little tool here with a hole, and I put a new connector on there, and you know, soldered those and heat shrunk them and all that stuff like I did. And this is what it looked like when I got through working on it. You know, we made it look like new again. We wanted to be, we got the original style connector, we got a good relay and put in there. That other one over there is the E power relay. But the only one that caught fire, and there was a little damage down here on the AC relay, but the only one that caught fire was that fuel pump relay. That's pointing us in that direction. Now, this Ranger, by the way, had dual tanks on it. It's real unusual for a Ranger to have dual tanks. And with dual tanks, you're going to have a fuel pump in each tank, right? All right, so basically you see you got a pump in the center in each tank, you got a tank selector valve switch, and then you got a fuel tank selector switch there. So the long and the short of it is, now that switch on underneath the truck actually makes a switch. When this switch on the dash triggers that switch under the truck, and it actually is what sends your fuel, you know, shuts off fuel from one tank and brings it from another. And all that. And so of course you got an inline high pressure pump, but you know the one y'all just put in the Bronco that was the low pressure pump? It had a low pressure pump in each tank on this one here. All right, so I got to tracking this, and I found out there were more melted wires too. These wires right here were melted on the over there on the other side, and there, I mean, this thing had been getting really hot. You can see right here. This is what I saw, that I said, oh, this is a problem. And so when I split it apart, I saw all of this garbage right here. And I said, this is going to have to be fixed too. So I had to fix all of that. And I noticed that when I disconnected this over here, then that one had been hot too. See how that one was trying to melt? I mean, the whole connector was heating up and getting hot. You know, and basically, you know, you get to the point there, if you're somebody that doesn't like doing electrical stuff, that, oh, it's going to set fire to this. Well, backing away from it is not an option. In a situation like we were in here, you got to go ahead and keep going until you figure it out. It's going to be fixed right when you do fix it. The melted tank selector connector. Look at that. All right, I believe that's my last slide, but what I'm going to tell you what happened, let me make sure. Yep, I'll tell you what happened on that. And actually I did some measuring. It turned out that the fuel pump in the front tank, that's the long one that looks like a cigar, was pulling 40 amps. And how many amperage is a fuel pump supposed to pull? Even pumping fuel, do you remember, any of you guys? I talk about it all the time. 4 to 8 amps. If it ain't pushing any fuel, it's going to push about 1.5 amps. But if it's pulling 40 amps, that wasn't enough to blow a fuse or burn up a fusible link, because it actually had fusible links. It didn't have fuse on that. It would have blown a fuse on a newer vehicle, but that one there had fusible links, which basically can take more of a surge without blowing. But you know, that's basically a piece of wire with Avalon insulation around it that's made so that if the wire burns through on the inside, you know, it won't be exposed to anything else, typically. Okay, why was my alternator showing less than 12 volts? It was like, what happens on our tester out here, our snap-on tester, when we turn that load knob? Voltage goes down because we've got a load, right? The load on that one is a carbon pile that's wired between the positive and the negative cable. And so it's making a dead short to ground, isn't it? Okay, and that's what was going on there, except this dead short to ground, or not a dead short to ground, but it was a 40 amp draw, was coming from the front pump. Now he didn't want to put a front pump in it. He basically just wanted to, you know, use the rear tank, and I'm not paying $125 for a pump and labor to put it in there, and blah, 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 and all that sort of thing. But the long and the short of it was the alternator from AutoZone defective? No. It was a Hoss. It was working really hard. And the other one, why did the other alternator burn up? Probably because of this pump. It wasn't strong enough to burn up the wires. The weak link in that system was the alternator itself, and it died. And so what he failed to do was to realize that his alternator died for a reason. You know, it smoked that thing bad. And so long and short of it, you gotta find out what it is that actually is causing the thing before you just, see, I fixed my wires. And I said, now let's see what happens. And then it caught fire under the hood. And then I fixed that. And see, I kept strengthening the links in the chain and finding new ones that were weak, instead of fixing the heavy load. So anyway, that's a nice little learning experience. All right, so now you guys, I'm gonna tell you, you guys have also got some electrical sheets that you're supposed to do on the, what is that, live wire? You know what I mean? And they're not hard to do, they won't take you long to do, they're kind of fun. And so one of them you're supposed to draw it and then do it. I've also got this board over here that you can wire up and all that, because I want you guys to understand that well enough. Justin has already wired up the fan board. The fan board actually whipped some guys last semester and they just gave up and walked away. You know, I mean, it seriously did. I mean, they kept, I sat down and showed them how to do it, and I wired it up right, and I turned the fans on, you know, low speed on both fans, high speed on, you know, and then they did it again and again and again, and finally they just walked away. How do you do this, you know? And I don't know how far that's going to take them, you know. You know what I mean? I mean, one of them was talking about going to diesel. You know what I'm saying? After he done that, you know, and I said, you know, that's whenever they do stuff down there, it's not easy stuff. You know what I mean? So I don't know how that's going to wind up. But anyway, there's the